in general, my report has ups and downs about people we saw, places we visited, and stories we heard. So people we met, places we visited, and stories we heard. And my goal for this evening to be a success is if you at the end have one or two stories in your heads that are like, wow, that's really a powerful story. And you can let me know if you do or do not. Our relationship, ours meaning the Jewish Federation of Western Connecticut, is with an organization called JAFI, Jewish Agency for Israel. In Hebrew, the Sochnut, the Jewish Agency. Their work is worldwide. And when we met with the people, they told us stories about all kinds of operations, connections, engagements that they met with people throughout the world, including spending, I think, 40% of their budget on interactions with the American Jewish community through something like this partnership, through shlichim, through summer camp emissaries, shlichim, and through a program called Shinshinim, which Rachel has two of in Eastern Connecticut, something that I learned a little more about on this trip, of bringing two people to our community who are high school graduates or graduating high school to spend time in our community. So year, but something that is now on my agenda for the future. Because if I learned anything on this trip, is that we need to even do more than we are doing in connecting with our homeland, with the state of Israel, and the process of rebuilding after the war might eventually end is going to take years and years and years. And the Israelis not only need our money, which is important, but also need our emotional support. So a message that we heard time and time again from the different stops that we made, and places we visited, was don't forget about us. A bit of a feeling of malaise from the Israelis we spoke with, that the government had forgotten about them and continues to forget about them. And having us come to visit is very, very important. In fact, one place which I'll talk about later, the Israeli woman who spoke, kept apologizing that her English wasn't so good. Why? Because she hasn't had a group visit since before the war. Well, that's a long time. And she lives in the north and she's able to go back to her home now, but people are just not visiting. And I felt it was like a mitzvah, just an amazing thing that we were able to be there and be in her small factory. I'll talk about her a little more. So I am going to share my screen now. Okay, so as some of you know, this was put together and looks good. The first shot is standing with the mayor of Gilboa, which we'll talk about later on, as well as going to hear a beautiful musical concert in the conservatory in Gilboa, which we'll talk about also further on. So this is our first slide. Those of you who can read Hebrew, read the Hebrew. It says ha joint. There's no translation. It's just ha joint. And when I went into the cab at the train station in Jerusalem, I gave the address, and he said, "Oh, the joint." The joint, which some of you personally support, and certainly we as a federation, their central worldwide headquarters is in Jerusalem. They are in many, many countries around the world, and they were and still are instrumental in helping the Jews in Ukraine. We'll talk a little more about that later, because we actually met somebody who was director in Ukraine and that is now in Jerusalem. But if you're looking for, good causes in the world, the joint is really a great a great cause. This is in Jerusalem. They have an archive center. They have like kind of like a mini museum. And if you're in Jerusalem, this is worthwhile for an hour or two visit.
Hey, Paul, there's a request to make the slides a little bit bigger if you can.
Okay, just tell me how to do that.
You on a PC or a Mac?
I'm on Dell PC at my desk.
If you can hit Control and the plus sign, and it should expand it.
Okay, I expanded to 180%.
Uh, doesn't seem to have any effect. Let me see if I can't do it from here.
I thought you could just do it yourself on your screen.
You might be able to do that too.
So as we take a moment, I should that this session is being recorded because somebody asked me to record it because he couldn't be free this evening but wanted to hear it. So I just share that with you. I should have asked people's permission, but I'm sharing it. So Steve, should we continue?
Sure, let's continue.
Okay, so all of you know that some of the hostages are being released.
Yes.
So I will share with you that on one hand, there is excitement, there's positivity, there's hope for the future. Families are being reunited, and things feel good. On the other hand, there is great anxiety, fear, that the people who are being freed by Israel are the worst of the worst, right? Some of them have, 20 life sentences on their record, and they're being freed. So this hit me pretty personally because some of you might remember, it goes back 30 years ago, there was the 18 bus in Jerusalem on Jaffa Road, where there was a terrorist attack and the bus was exploded. Many people were killed. Many people were hurt. One of the people who was killed was a former staff member of mine who was going with his then girlfriend to be married, we're told. And his girlfriend, not a camper of mine, but a member of the synagogue that I belong to in Teaneck, New Jersey. The mastermind of that event was released. So there's all kinds of emotions all over the map about what's going on. We were all thrilled and happy to be together our very first night to watch this on the TV with people we know each other a little bit, but a lot of us have never met each other, with our partners in Gilboa, watching this unfold. I dare say it was a historic moment. And if we want to think positively, hopefully just another step towards a more lasting agreement and peace. The picture that you see has, and I'm blanking out on her name, I apologize, but you see that two of her fingers were blown off or cut off, we're not sure. And that hand with three fingers has become somewhat of a symbol of the hostages, the Chatufim and the Chatufot that are still in Gaza. And if you look in the bottom right of the screen, you see the Israeli flag with a Hebrew phrase. Some of you are able to read it. Some of you, I'll just share it in Hebrew and then in English with you. It says, Chozrim Habaita, returning home. And that's where the positivity and excitement was. There was a feeling that, thank God, these people are finally returning home. They have a long road ahead of them of maybe physical rehabilitation, certainly emotional support is going to be needed, but that this was a great step. For us to be there was a real zchut, a real privilege for me and for the rest of us. This is the conservatory in Afula. This is the group of people who are on this mission, as well as the leadership of the conservatory. The conservatory is an amazing facility, but what's even more amazing is that we were treated to a concert by the orchestra of all teens, all dressed with white tops, black bottoms, all, I guess, between 14 and 18. And then afterwards, there was a group that sang. Some of the JFed execs of larger federations started talking already about bringing this group next year to Connecticut. And it's something that, while we might not be able to do, we will certainly connect with the other federations. And if this works out, I strongly encourage you to go hear them. This is one of the places that we support, and life seems to just go on for them, meaning they rehearse, they practice. It was hard to get into this group. It's a challenging group because it's on such a sophisticated level. And we were able to hear a concert with them. This was the same night I also met with the mayor of Afula, because he's really proud of this facility, of the conservatory. This is just a picture of the group, and with our Israeli folk as well, meeting the assistant mayor of the area. And if you see in the background, towards the left, is a map of the entire area, not just of Afula, but the area that is known as the Gilboa. This is yours truly. So here I am with the mayor. He was just so thrilled, so accessible, so menschy, so down to earth. He spent, I would say, 2 hours with us, maybe a little more during the concert. He spoke a little before the concert. We had dinner with him. It was a real privilege to meet I'm going to say, sound-minded Israeli politician who's really trying to build up his city, a city that is celebrating its 100th anniversary. We got a little banner outside now, my office, of Afula with the number 100. When I first heard that Afula was our sister city, it might have been during my interviews. My memory is when I was on the one-year program in 79, 80, and we thought of Afula as the armpit of Israel. It's far from, so Eric's shaking his head no, it's far from that. It's a beautiful, thriving city with all kinds of restaurants, shopping, open air places to walk around. It's up north. It is not far at all from Jenin, but life goes on there. And Afula has been able to assimilate and integrate into the fabric of society all kinds of Jews. There are white Jews, there are Jews of color, they're older, they're younger, they're wealthier, they're poorer. There are people who are a little more frum and a little less observant. There are people from all over the world who are newly arrived immigrants, most notably from Ethiopia and from the former Soviet Union. So here's a mayor who's really trying to make it in the city and trying to really make it for the city as well. His name, by the way, is Avi. And if you're there and you tell me, I bet he will want to meet you and say hello. He's that kind of person. So this was another stop. This is the Mishkan Art Museum and Art Center, one of the largest in Israel, certainly in the north. And we spent time with the director, with the curator, director, and maybe one other person on a personal tour with our group. And if you look at this this artwork, I'm curious what, I know this is hard to do on Zoom, what you might see in this artwork. You can just, if you want to just shout it out, you can. If not, I'll continue. you see numbers. If you look closely, you see Arabic. So this artist, who was born in 1966, I'm sure I'm mispronouncing his name, Kader Oshach, was born in a refugee camp. And this is a picture symbolically representing Palestinian women who were killed and their ages at which they were killed. So you see from 20 to 39, 28 to 80 years old. And what's interesting to me, and it's a story to tell, is that this is part of their museum. They didn't decide to, put it in the basement. They decided to hide it. They brought this Arab artist who's, again, born in a refugee camp to be able to present his art in this very Israeli Jewish art museum. I found that, kind of powerful, because next door to this artwork was like a Sabbath exhibit with all kinds of Shabbat paintings. This kind of caught my eye a little bit and kind of gave me hope for good people trying to do good things to bring peace to Israel. This, some of you who were on the Zoom back in July, this is a pretty identical picture to something I shared with you. This is very near Jenin. It's in a yeshuv called Gan Ner. And I kind of asked you to look at this a little bit, because what you see, if you look at the right picture, if you look, that is Jenin. Jenin is really, really close to the area that we were in. And on the left side, you see all these cameras. And if you look, I'm pointing, that's silly. The bottom screen towards the left, the top middle picture, you might see like a new dirt road. That is a road that's been put in or improved recently with funds from this community, as well as some funds from different federations in Connecticut, something that we might want to support in the future. So this community now has cameras looking at Jenin. You see 3, 6, 9, 18 cameras. They have drones that are up 12 to 18 hours a day, I think. And they feel like they need to protect their community. When I was there in June, they asked me not to take this picture. This time we asked, and they said, sure, take it. And the people who just see kind of the back, their head on the right and left, are people who are working to secure this community. They're looking to buy more cameras for other communities as well, because they're so close to the border. And they don't necessarily think if there's an attack that the army will come in full-fledged right away, just because the army is all over. As Rachel Albert and I discussed earlier today, like they're plugging holes all over the Middle East, and probably in areas that we don't even know of. These dollars come from outside of Israel and inside of Israel. They now feel they are living in a much more secure area thanks to their volunteer and work efforts. Itzik is one of the people who sits on the volunteer board in Israel, just like we have this group here in Connecticut. And Eric Albert sits on that. They have a group in Israel too. And he does volunteer work just like our volunteers do it here. I had a discussion with him of, what if we wanted to bring a group from Connecticut? He would love it. He would love to host. So this is my first plug to saying that it's on my agenda now to do an Israel trip. It's not going to happen tomorrow. It's not going to happen next month. but sometime in the future, I hope we have some kind of Connecticut group that goes to Israel to visit our partners, people that we help support, as well as other places in Israel. So you can say you heard it first here. Okay, Penina. Penina was born in Ethiopia. I call her a refugee from Ethiopia, but she did not want to live there. She's the director of the Partnership Together program. So for those of you who do not know what that is, many federations in America, I discussed this a little at the beginning, have partnerships with communities in Israel. She oversees the big picture, and she was able to spend some time with us. And we met with some other partnerships too. It's a way to take this big picture that we call the State of Israel and bring it to a smaller place. So I mentioned the Shinshinim. That program transforms an American community. I mentioned a trip that we might go on that helps transform a community. And our assigned community is Afula and the region. Eric, you might know better than I how that got started. Someone said maybe a family from Hartford started that. I don't know.
The relationship with Afula-Gilboa?
Right, like why we got Afula and not somewhere else.
Well, I think it goes back to the original partnership where the Jewish federations partnered cities or areas with cities and towns all over Israel. So obviously, I think New York has Jerusalem, and LA has I think Tel Aviv and whatever, LA, whatever. And so our region of at the time, I think the 9 Jewish federations in Connecticut, Rhode Island, Western Mass were partnered with, really at the time, with Afula-Gilboa, which is actually a fairly large geographic area, but it was back then really almost, I wouldn't say like a cow town. It was very agricultural and small, probably 30,000 people, I think, and now well over 100. So that's how it got started, and we've been able to grow along with the region and be able to provide more service.
Great. Thank you. Okay, the next picture is was one of our first stops, if not our first stop. It's a place called Dorot, as in generations, Dorot Big Gilboa in that region. And this picture really does not do any justice to what goes on there. It's just one picture I took. Dorot Big Gilboa brings all kinds of older people to a incredibly growing physically facility that services people who are older. I can't say 60 years old is older, but it is older. And all kinds of people come here. So there's a program. We walked by a room where people were learning how to play the recorder. There was a program for Holocaust survivors. There are lectures. There are, since COVID and the war, the staff of Dorot Gilboa, which is a lot of social workers, educators, community builders, sometimes also go out to homes because people either are afraid or really can't leave their homes. But every day there are many of these older folk who come to this center, this merkaz. It's a beautiful facility. And this artwork is going to be hung up in their lobby whenever it gets done. And it is going to be a mosaic. So the picture is of me putting a mosaic on. I was able to cut the stone, put some glue on, and put on, 8 or 10 pieces. The guy in the foreground is there every day, a few hours every day. This is what he does. This kind of anchors something in his life that he's able to go out and be together with other people. There are warm or hot lunches served. There's snacks all over the place. And again, this is a place that we help support. And anywhere we went where we helped support as a federation, the appreciation was just incredible. Even though, like, we're not giving their whole budget, we're giving a token, but we're giving what we can give, and we're giving enough to make people feel appreciated. And again, back to that theme of not forgotten. That there's Jews in this place called Connecticut. Some of them don't even know where Connecticut is, or certainly can't pronounce it. And we are there with them. This is a picture of people who run the Rape Crisis Center in Afula and in Haifa. This is a place where some people here support personally, and Federation of Western Connecticut also, sorry, not just of Western Connecticut, all the federations in this consortium help support. The woman all the way to the right in the picture is from Atlanta. The woman all the way to the left is the director of the program, and they have served women who have been raped or in families where there's abuse of other types since 1979. So it's certainly a well-established place. And since the war, there's been, this other level of unspeakable stuff that went on in Gaza. And they were really ready, as much as anybody, to be able to give counseling and support to some of the people who've been released. And they're still, thinking about all the people who might still be in Gaza, women and men who are, need to do all kinds of terrible, terrible things. It was a real pleasure and privilege to be able to meet them. And you can see smiles. They feel good about what they do. They feel good about our support and our connection. And it was a real pleasure to meet them. This is Kibbutz Adamit. So this is one of the only places I did not tell my wife I was going to, because this kibbutz that was closed off for many, many months, people are now allowed back, but are not rushing back, is very, very close to the border with Lebanon. They suffered not casualties because people were not on the kibbutz, but they suffered damage from Hezbollah, and they are now standing guard. This is one of the soldiers who was there, and they're hoping that people are going to start coming back to the kibbutz. This gave me a lot of kind of positive feeling that maybe we're at a point of getting back to normal in Israel. I can't say that for sure, but I can say that certainly we are well on the way. But after we went to Adamit, and by the way, from Gilboa up here was, I don't know, maybe a half an hour car ride, and the temperature must have dropped like 10 or 15 degrees with wind. It was really, some of us were not necessarily prepared for that. But here, we went to a Druze village, I think. And this was somebody's home that was partially destroyed by Hezbollah. And
It was definitely a community center, but I don't remember that it was Druze.
Or it was definitely not Jewish. That much I remember, but there was a lot to remember, and nobody's there. Yet this village, after 2 months, they kind of demanded from the Israeli government that they be allowed back to their community, because a lot of the people who became refugees from the north and from the south were put into hotel rooms all over Israel, not where they have their homes, and many people in one room. And the tradition of this community, they didn't feel right having grandparents, parents, and children in one small space. Some of them are back there, but you can see the Hezbollah attacks were not only against Jews, it was against all Israelis. And this is just one shot. This is from months and months ago, where they have not been able to rebuild yet. Now, you might think this is kind of like a silly picture. And I wish I was able to bring back enough and like mail it out to all of you. I want any guesses what this is? So this is dried fruit sushi. So just try to picture that. The outside, I think, was dried guava, and we kind of mashed different fruits on top and rolled it like sushi and then cut it up. It was incredibly sweet. And I share this story with you because the woman, Idan, who came back and started her store factory again, has a website, and I'm going to send out this information on Friday. A website called Idan Fruit, IDAN fruit.co.il, idanfruit.co.il. Here's a great example of how you can not only get great dried fruit that's organic, that has no sugar added, that is kosher from Israel, but you're supporting her return to her home and to the north. And you're getting something very, very tangible in return. And if you get to go to Israel, I strongly encourage you to visit her. She was the woman who said, you know, my English is not so good because you're the only group that's come here in 15 months, and please don't forget about us. You know, with a little emotion in her voice. Some of her horses were killed. There was some damage to crops. A neighbor's home was partially destroyed. And here we were able to give her some, you know, positive feelings and support. So I just kind of had to take a picture of that. I did not declare it when I went through customs in Newark, and I now have some at home. So that is positive, that is good. And again, positive with the negative interwoven. This is a Hebrew sign, clearly, mamad. This is a sign at the hotel we stayed in when we were not in Afula, but right outside of Afula in Charod, a kibbutz, beautiful kibbutz, and they have some really beautiful guest facilities up towards the top of the mountain. But this was a safe room because we were so close to the border and so close to the fence of the kibbutz. And we all asked, I guess, as Americans, like, where's the safe room? What happens if there's an attack? What do we do? And one of the answers we got was, you know, don't worry so much. Jenin is like in the valley, and for them to come up here, they have to go up one hill, down a valley, up another hill. They'll never come up here, which, you know, was a good answer in a certain sense, but I am sure the people in Kibbutz Be'eri and places like that also thought nobody was going to come from Gaza. So this is a very stark reminder that Israel's still at war. And we went to the Mamad. There's Wi-Fi. There was some stuff to drink. Not much else. Maybe a chair or two in case something happened. And again, this is, you know, after a beautiful day that we spent seeing great places and meeting wonderful people, this is still there. This is Mordon HaSandwich. So this was started a number of years ago by a guy named Itzik Fahima. And he decided he wanted to basically help some of the needy in Afula. So, excuse me, he started to make sandwiches and give them out to people who needed them. It's exactly what we did when we went there. We made different sandwiches. We hung out with the teenagers So they have a different group of teenagers who come once a week, like 10th, 11th graders. And they make these sandwiches to give out to people in Afula who just don't have enough to eat. So this isn't, I don't think this is one of the places that we help. It's really small. But Achia, who's our Jaffe person, really wanted to share this with us. It was really inspiring for three reasons. One, it was one man's idea. He wanted to do it. One person can change the world. Here's proof. Number two is though Afula is a much wealthier community than years ago, there's still a lot of people who are poor and who need this kind of support, and this man makes that happen. And number three, and not any less important than one or two, is that he gets teenage kids to volunteer their time to do this kind of work and make sure that they are helping people who need this. One of the boys who I met and we spoke for a while was from Kiryat Shmona, which is all the way north, which has been evacuated, and he's now in Afula. And the conversation was a lot about how's it been to be 15 years old and, you know, in 24 hours notice, if not less, leave your home with a suitcase to a town that you don't know anything about and to go to school. Was he welcome? What does it feel like to be in Afula? Does he want to go back to Kiryat Shmona? So the answers were that he was very well received, glad to be part of this program, feels, you know, like life is good for him right now, does not have any idea whether he wants to ever go back home or not, which is only like an hour away. But this Moadon sandwich gives him an anchor to be helpful. So again, the weaving of sad and happy. This is one of my happy places. This is Falafel-Golani. It is really very famous in the Jewish world. Anyone who I said I was going to Afula, who's been to Israel, said, "Oh, you're gonna, you know, have the falafel." I don't know, but we did. This is a very typical like Israeli falafel place with all this food out, which, you know, you have to throw out your American sanitary ideas. We had a fun time there. The owner was really happy to have, you know, 12 people come in for lunch, and that's the Falafel-Golani. So happy and still very, very, very sad. You still see stickers, artwork, posters of Hirsch around Israel. My brother, who's Israeli, his family, they all know who he is. They all know his parents. And this was just painted on a utility room, and it's his picture. And the words on the bottom right in Hebrew, which I'll share and translate. Or means light, ahava means love, and shalom, you know what shalom is. So he's still part of the consciousness of Israelis. And I took another picture of something that was put up because you see on the upper right in blue the word slicha. So there's definitely a feeling that among certain Israelis that they failed Hirsch and they failed the other hostages. Slicha means to ask for forgiveness. I'm sorry. And that is definitely amongst certain Israelis, not amongst everybody. That is definitely a feeling out there. So I'll share that, you know, the hostage release, and I mentioned this earlier, people are all over the map from saying, "I'm sorry, Hirsch, we failed you," to, you know, the opposite end of the spectrum. Here This face you might remember from our October 7th event where our speaker, Ira Kohler, spoke of his friend from Schechter School on Long Island. They both went to that high school. They both went to college and finished college early and went to serve in the Army. Ira survived clearly and is on the speaking circuit. And Omer Nutra, Alaf HaShalom, may his memory be a blessing, was alive for a very long time and was killed. But his face is also in different places in Israel. And while in Judaism, you really supposed to end on a positive note, which I will, this was the first picture I took when I landed in Israel. So this is a picture of Kfir Bibas. Some of you might remember I mentioned this back in July. We are blessed with two redheaded grandchildren who are roughly the same exact age as the Bibas kids. And, you know, my daughter goes around almost every day saying how lucky she is that she lives in Livingston, New Jersey, and not near Gaza, because it could have been her two boys as well. And you see this kind of love affair with these two kids because they were the youngest people captured. No one really thinks they're alive, but they're part of some handing over, hopefully sooner rather than later. So I want to share four things that will conclude this, and then if there are any questions. One is the message that we heard from the Jewish Agency's development head. It's a hopeful time, and it's a time to rebuild the nation, both physically, emotionally, every way that you can imagine. They need our help. Anything that we can do, visit, support, rally for, encourage friends of yours who don't give to Israel to give. This is what they are asking for, loud and clear. The women who were released just recently, and seeing them being paraded in Gaza City and up on the stage. One of my colleagues posted something on Facebook that it reminds them of, you know, the phrase outside of Auschwitz of work makes you free. This was a terrible thing that just to add salt to the wound. And yet there's all this happiness and joy. So if you feel like I am going back and forth emotionally, that is what it's like to be in Israel these days. And finally, I want to thank our Federation's leadership for encouraging me to be able to go and making it possible that I can go. It was great to be in Israel representing this federation, which I know is so supportive of Israel, and representing really each and every one of you. I hope in the future some of you can join such a trip because it's really almost life-changing. And I've been to Israel countless times when I worked for camp. My brother's there, so we have visited, spent many Pesach, Yom Ha'atzmaut in Israel. This was probably one of the more educational and emotional few days that I spent there. So again, thank you to actually each of you for making this happen. Okay, so we're going to stop the share. Great. And if there's any comments, responses, if Rachel wants to correct me on anything that I messed up.
I just wrote down one note that at the Sandwich Club, when Itzik was telling us all about feeding the hungry children from the area, they said the word natan, give, is a palindrome. It works both ways. When you're giving the sandwiches, you're also receiving something in return, which I thought was just such a beautiful way to think about the whole project.
Thank you. Well, great. So I hope you take away a story or two to have in your heart, soul, and mind now.